Ms. Reddy, thank you very much for joining us. This is one of your key flagship hospitals.
Yes.
It has 700 beds. It's in the NCR region. I wanted to, however, start this conversation by talking about your digital arm, because recently there's a lot of optimism from the brokerage community around what is happening with Apollo 24/7, which is housed in Apollo Health Company. Can you give us a sense in terms of where things stand? Because the GMV is expected to probably rise to around 1,500 crores. That's what's targeted. And there is hope that the user base, the medicine volumes can go up by 5x.
Yes, so let me start by saying that at Apollo, everything we do is based on clinical knowledge and moving closer to the consumer. So this was, this is how 24/7 was thought of. Even though it was launched during COVID, we recognized the importance of having patients access the hospital. We also realized that the world is changing, and internet penetration in India of smartphones itself is 54%. So we said, let's use this information and our experience that we have as a hospital, as a clinical provider, and then move it into something which, a digital phase, which is 24/7. So if you think of 24/7, we started with 3 offerings, which is pharmacy online, teleconsults, where we do about 2,500 teleconsults, and now 3,000 diagnostics. So we have currently 3 offerings, and we will offer condition management.
How much of the revenue is actually from diagnostics within the vertical? How much of it is from pharmacy? The reason I ask is that one of the criticisms about a lot of these omni-channel plays is that you get majority of your volumes from diagnostics. Is that the case?
No, actually here, we have a very strong pharmacy arm. So we have the largest offline pharmacies, which are 5,000. So this is currently a very strong pharmacy play. About next year, 75 to 80% of our revenues will be pharmacy online, and the balance will be between teleconsults as well as diagnostics. But more importantly, we're adding on condition management. And when you do condition management, you're actually looking after the well-being of your consumers.
Do you think that that has enough potential even after COVID? Because teleconsulting, condition management had really come up during COVID on a digital scale. But is that expected to continue or even scale up?
No, certainly it will continue because, as you think of digital penetration and ease of use, it will scale up. So while it peaked at 5,000 teleconsults during COVID, we still have 50% of them continuing. And I think it's all about patient engagement, where we want to be, in the entire life cycle of the consumer's healthcare journey. And so therefore, I do believe it will continue.
Most of it is probably follow-on consulting and maybe even new streams such as mental health?
Certainly, it is follow-up because, the first consult, it's always good to have a physical consult. And then you interact and engage with the patient or the consumer in their healthcare journey. But beyond that, I think it's emergencies where they will need a specialist or they will need a doctor. And the fact that we're able to provide one in 20 minutes, I think makes a huge difference.
So one of the things which has been spoken about in terms of e-pharmacies is the kind of steep competition that we're seeing. For example, MedPlus had told us that, the first 3 orders by an online e-pharmacy, the discount is so high that it's difficult to sometimes compete with that. What is the kind of discounts provided by Apollo and as compared to what the industry in the e-pharmacy space is providing?
So I think, we should not be compared to anyone in particular because we are different and we are an omni-channel play. So we have 5,000 stores and we also now with digital, we have 20 million downloads. So it's a combination of both, And I think this gives us a lot of flexibility. And so in terms of discounting, I think we've reduced discounting. We're probably at 18.5.
This is for online or offline?
For online. And of course, for us, our focus is re-engagement with the consumer. We don't want it to be a one-time transaction. And this is where we have a huge strength. Because every customer who comes to our physical store is a repeat, he's a repeat customer online. Every person who engages with the hospital has a higher chance, will use the online pharmacy mode. So like in the telecom sector, there was deep discounting. And, and slowly it's been phasing out, because eventually, if you're in a business, you have to be able to show sustainability through profits. And that will happen in 24/7.
And brick and mortar, if 18% is online, what is offline discounting?
It depends, because circle customers who are frequent users, and they get a deeper discount rather than, the retail walk-ins.
That's on the entire e-pharmacy bit. Now, as a whole, Apollo 24/7 is possibly expected to become EBITDA neutral by next year. Is that on the cards?
Yes, Apollo HealthCo will become EBITDA neutral next year.
So it'll be EBITDA neutral. What about, are you expecting your user base to grow 5x, your medicine orders to grow 5x? That's what's envisaged and estimated at this point.
Yes, so we looked at GMV and it's grown tremendously. We currently will close the year with 1,500 crores of GMV, and it will double next year. And which is why, we're quite sure that we will be EBITDA breaking.
Okay, so you're expecting it to probably go to 3,000 crores by FY24?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, what about fundraising? Because y'all have said that y'all are probably looking at fundraising maybe by the end of FY23.
Yes.
Where do things stand? Because in the past, y'all were on track in terms of fundraising, but that got derailed a little bit, or it got delayed. Where is it?
So delayed for a great reason. In terms of performance, we're ahead of what we had planned. And I think it's just getting better, because revenues, GMV is picking up, revenues are getting, we're seeing a huge increase in revenues. In fact, like I said, a doubling next year. So if you look at the absolute cash burn, it's about 150 crores. And we think we'll have only one more year of, where they'll need cash. So while we are looking at investment, I think we'll look for investment that values us. And we at Apollo Hospitals do not want to be significantly diluted, because this is the new age company that I'm sure has great growth.
So 200 million is probably what you're looking at in terms of a fundraise on the maximum or the upper side for Apollo?
Yes, you're right. Maximum 200, but not really required 200.
And how much would you be willing to dilute?
Maximum, I would say 20%. But since we're not looking at 200 million, it could be less.
Okay. Would it be a strategic or a financial investor?
We have options, let me just say that. We'll decide closer to our board meeting.
Would it be a combination of both, more than one investor?
No.
And would it probably close by FY23?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, so maybe by the end of, in the next 3 to 4 months is when we could probably expect that to take place. But now coming down to the hospital business, hospital services has really picked up post-COVID. Your occupancies were around 58%. Are you expecting that to probably improve? Because the industry currently, a couple of your peers are at 70-75%. What is the trajectory on occupancies? So
last quarter it was at 68%, and we did have a lot of fevers also. But the important thing about Apollo is really, one, a denominator has changed. So we have a 9% increase in operational beds. So therefore, you have to keep that in mind when you look at occupancy. I think the second most important thing is that our ALOS has moved from 3.78 to 3.4. And therefore, our asset utilization and absolute number of patients have grown by 19%. So that, these figures on occupancy will keep changing. But these are the triggers, levers that we use.
But any kind of guidance that you have in terms of what your target occupancy would be, where do you want it to sustain? I think it's around 70%.
Yes, you're right. It's around 70%. And I think with this level of ALOS and the current case mix we have, this is, it will generate a lot of free cash flow.
But this case mix, one of the views is that complex surgeries have increased quite significantly because the awareness is greater. So in terms of your case mix, is it much more complex as compared to pre-COVID?
So at Apollo, we've always focused on our COEs, Centers of Excellence, which are cardiac, orthopedic, neurology, transplants, robotic surgery, and a lot of general surgical work and mother and child. So as we look at these specialties, there has been a tremendous increase. So if you take oncology, for example, when we started our investment cycle, we were at 800 crores of revenue. Then we invested in the proton, which really no one in Southeast Asia had done. And hopefully we should close the year with 1,700 crores of revenue coming from oncology. But the premise of all this, the base of all this is that our clinical outcomes should be the best in the world. And therefore we attract the talent. And therefore we can invest in the technology.
The Proton Therapy Center, how much is it generating in terms of revenue? What is the occupancy like? Do you need to set up another center? Can we expect that?
So in terms of revenue right now, it's about 260 crores of revenue. But we're only at 50% capacity utilization. And I think, during COVID, we didn't get that many patients, but it has picked up tremendously.